All right, today we're going to be talking about the Coyote and why it's one of the best swaps you can do into older vehicles, honestly how great they are. Now, I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to know about the Coyote in this particular video, so if you're thinking about Coyotes or if you're just curious about them, this is a video for you. Now, if you want to take a deeper dive on top of this, I strongly recommend this book. When I finished this book, I came away feeling very good about my purchase. That book was informational. It had a lot of stuff in there. Like, there was a whole bunch of aha moments. Like, you flip a page and you're like, wow, that cleared a lot up. But anyways, let's get into the video. To the Megatron of knowledge. Today, what we're talking about is why the 5.0 Coyote is one of the smartest, cheapest swaps you can possibly do into a vehicle. We're going to talk about the fuel savings you get, F-150 versus Mustang, generational variances. We're going to touch on the Voodoo a little bit, touch on some flat plane crank information. Like I said, by the end of this video, you'll know what you need to know. So why would you want to swap a Coyote into an older vehicle? I also have the AI make these slides. I just tell them what's on the slides, and you're going to have to ignore the graphics. Because, like, for example, why would you have a 10,000 jump on a tachometer from here to here? It doesn't make sense. But when you try to have the AI fix it, it only gets worse. So just ignore the graphics, okay? And there might even be a couple of spelling errors. The harder I try to make the AI to do something, the more it rebels. I don't know if they're written by females or what, but they don't like being told they're wrong.
Oh my God, Matthew, here we go again. You're telling the viewers the graphics look weird and they're spelling errors. I'm an artist with vision, and right now my vision is making that supercharger graphic a little more dramatic. Next time, just say please and compliment my last slide first.
Anyways, so out of the box, you're looking at 412 to 500 plus horsepower. You get modern fuel injection, reliability, durability, real world miles per gallon at a high horsepower, runs great on regular 87 octane. The Coyotes come between 11 to 1 to 12 to 1 compression, depending on what generation you pick. They have the TIVCT, variable cam timing, knock sensors and injections. They run safely and strongly on 87 octane. I'll explain why that's important for a second, but the point is, no need for premium gas like in some LS builds. That's pretty awesome. So, why is the Coyote one of the cheapest installs you can do? But you're like, hey, CRS, when I look at a junkyard pull on an LS and I look at a junkyard pull on a Coyote, the Coyote is so much more expensive. How do you claim it's the cheapest? That's because it can run on 87 octane and it gets good fuel mileage. So your Coyote is going to get about 22 miles to the gallon and you can run on 87 octane. So you're looking at $4 a gallon. To go 100,000 miles, it's going to cost you $18,180. Your LS is going to get about 15 miles to the gallon, and on some builds you're going to be forced to run 91 octane, which is $4.50 a gallon. So to go 100,000 miles, it's going to cost $30,000. Your cost savings on just the fuel economy alone for the Coyote over 100,000 miles is $11,820. Essentially, you're getting a free Coyote if you make it 100,000 miles on this, because not very many of the Coyotes cost over $11,000. All right, now there is a difference between the F-150s and the Mustang Coyotes. They are not equal. The F-150 variants, those are made for trucks. They're durable, but again, they're made for trucks. Mustangs, you're looking at higher horsepower, high rev, short runners, advanced camshafts, stainless steel headers. Again, there's one of those spelling errors I was talking about. Your F-150, you're looking at torque focused. It's going to have long runners, medium, mild cams, cast iron manifolds, so you're not going to get your headers. Torque curve is going to come on early. So there are differences. There are reasons why you'd want to put a Coyote out of an F-150 and something, like say you're building a truck. Great reason. Or you know what? These F-150 Coyotes are insanely cheap and crazy available. So maybe if you want to go with a really, really cheap Coyote and you don't mind, having more of the fleet style Coyote instead of the performance style Coyote, an F-150 may be a good choice. All right, so I kind of already covered that, but the F-150s, because of the availability, the cores are extremely cheap. They are extremely available. Great torque for street and truck swaps. So if you're looking stoplight to stoplight, maybe a truck Coyote is the way to go. You're going to get your torque that comes on early. So yeah, through city driving in that, F-150 Coyote is not bad at all. Mustang variants, now you're going to get your high rev, your high-end power. Be careful, your harnesses are not equal. They are different. Your computers also are different. So you're going to have to figure all that stuff out when you do it. But obviously, if you're buying a pullout anyway, you're going to buy the engine plus the harness, probably plus the transmission, probably plus the ECU, and probably the TCU. Because it's just better to buy all that stuff as a package and get the entire ecosystem. We're going to talk more on the ecosystems as this video progresses on, and why I strongly recommend buying into an ecosystem instead of trying to piece things together. Alright, so what's the deal here? The old school 5.0s versus Coyotes. Boring and stroking. So back in the olden days, when you're talking about like the old 302s or 5.0s, that's basically what they were talking about, to truly unlock their full potential, it was almost mandatory you had to bore and stroke them. Otherwise, you're just not going to get the potential out of it. You can easily go to 347, you're like, 347? That's almost 50 cubic inches. Easily. You can go even farther than that, but easily out of a 302 block. Why would they just come out that fact? Why not just make 347s instead of 5.0s? Well, that's basically what they did in the modern Coyotes. They're like, hey, instead of having this block with all this extra material and all this extra room, why don't we just build things more efficiently? Why don't we put almost essentially the max bore and stroke we can in the size of the engine we can to get the most power out of the smallest package? Now, obviously that's a pretty oversimplification, but that's generally what's going on here. So with the Coyote, the philosophy is no wasted space. Everything takes up some sort of purpose. The bore and stroke, yes, you can bore and stroke these, but it's not like an old school where you just train the crankshaft, piston, and rods. Like, there's a lot more involved with it. It's more of a niche thing. So they're going to put the maximum performance in the smallest package. The trade-off is it's a lot harder to get big cubic inch, but that's not a big deal. Now, the Gen 3s, they have a special cylinder wall. If you want to start boring and stroking those, you got to re-sleeve it. So, again, it's getting harder and harder to do, but it's okay. Because you know what? That leaves the bottom end alone. Unless you put so much horsepower on the top end, you blow the bottom end out. Realistically, now the upgrades, instead of like having to go to a machine shop and having to have your 5.0 bored out, stroked, balanced, and brought back, now you're just doing cam swaps, head swaps, intake swaps. If that's not enough, put a little spray on there. If that's not enough, you can put forced induction on there. So the modern hot rodding, you no longer really have to mess with the bottom end of the block. Yeah, there's performance to be had there, but not really. Not like in the old school days. So that's a huge advantage for the newer tuners coming along, because forget the bottom end. Leave the bottom end alone. We're looking at heads, cams, intakes, throttle bodies, stuff like that. So yeah, that's cool because, like I said, back in the old days, if you truly want the hot rod, you got to crack into that bottom end. That bottom end just ain't going to handle it, because back in the day, the bottom end's going to have like 8.5, 9.5 to 1 compression, maybe even 9 to 1 compression. Who knows? It could be some sort of crazy fuel efficient version of it. So yeah, even throwing on heads, you can bump the compression up a little bit, but to really get power, you had to crack open the bottom end, you had to bore it out, you had to stroke it again, like go to the machine shop. You had to have a relationship with your machine shop. Now you're taking him out of the equation because Ford did all that for you. Again, you can bore and stroke these. I'm not saying you can't, but is it really worth it? The jury's still out on that, but I'm leaning towards no. Leave the bottom end alone, just play with the top end. Alright, so what are we looking at here? So Gen 1s, that's from 2011 to 2014. On average, you're going to get between 412 and 420 horsepower out of a base engine. Let that sink in for a second. The old 5.0s were like, what, 200 horsepower? 230? I mean, if you're really on point here, over 400 horsepower. 400 out of a stock Coyote. Something that's going to last well over 100,000 miles. You can literally go to a junkyard, pull this out, and you have 400 horsepower. And these are the old ones, so they're already getting cheap. Gen 2, 435 horsepower. Factory. Out of an engine that's widely available. This isn't some crazy bow tie Corvette engine you have to hunt down and get this special. No, this is widely available. Between 2015 and 2017, 435 horsepower for the Gen 2. That's insane, the technology that we've come. Now let's get into the Gen 3s. Almost 500 horsepower. 460 horsepower. And look at the time frame they ran these in. These are widely available. And now you got in the dual fuel injection. So essentially with the Gen 3s, so everybody understands fuel injection, right? There's a couple of different methods for it. There's throttle body where it just shoots in, right? I'll make a whole video breaking this down, but I'm just going to touch on it real quickly. So you have your throttle body where it just shoots in. Then you got where it's above the valves where it shoots in. Now the Gen 3s, they actually have an injector in the cylinder like a diesel. So they got one outside that basically irrigates the valve so you don't get carbon buildup on it, and at low speeds it relies on a fuel injector. When you drop the hammer, it shoots fuel directly into the cylinder, allowing you to run 12-to-1 compression on 87 octane fuel. Just amazing, crazy efficient. That gets you up to 460 horsepower. Then you got the Gen 4s. Who knows how long this generation is going to run, but now we're talking about 480 to 500 horsepower. The early 2000s, when you told me about 500 horsepower, that was some crazy, unachievable number unless you were going with like just this ridiculous stroked out engine or forced induction or turbo or a bunch of nitrous. It was just this unforeseen number. And you know what? If you hit that number, you're going to be rebuilding that engine like every summer. Things are going to break constantly. Now I can buy this engine out of a junkyard for a couple $1,000, go 100,000 miles reliably. I can run this engine straight on down to Florida if I want. Come on back, not even have to worry about any sort of problems with it whatsoever. That's amazing. And then you've got further refinements over the Gen 3. All right, so what are we getting in here? The different generations, you're going to be looking at different power levels, obviously, different injectors, different heads, bores. The Gen 3s, you're going to have a big jump in technology. The Gen 3 is like the fulcrum point. If I was doing a swap, I'd be looking at a Gen 3. Yeah, you're just going to get more power as the generations go on and on and on. Can't wait to see what a Gen 5 is like. So the big jumps we got here, a lot of it comes to the valve timing, right? Or, yeah, not valve timing, cam timing. So the Gen 1s, you did have cam timing, but it was more of a primitive behavior. It was an on and off thing. Like, all right, so at this point, if the computer sends this signal, we're going to flip it on, and it's going to go to this degree. Like, that's pretty much how it worked. Well, as the generations go on, now you got the phasers are going to lock up in the mid-range, and you're going to have a more of like, not an on and off, but like, all right, we want to apply this much cam timing to it, we can. They unlock that ability so it ain't just on and off like advanced and retarded. Now we can go a couple of degrees advanced. And then we can start controlling the exhaust as well. And then it got even more advanced in the Gen 3s. Now you're adding degrees. Now you got exhaust, intake, retardation, and advancing. Gen 3 to Gen 4 upgrades, we're going to look at a higher horsepower. 480 to 500, you're going to look at dual throttle bodies. Now you're going to be looking at headers of 4-into-1. Stronger internals, Predator-inspired internals in the Dark Horse. So stronger rods, stronger everything. Cooling is going to be improved and refined. All right, so cylinder technology. A lot of the builders are going to be sticking with a Gen 1 or a Gen 2. Because when you get to the Gen 3, now you got the plasma cylinders. And if you want to start like boring and stroking these, you got to resleeve it. And does anybody want to resleeve it? No. Because then you might as well just buy a crate engine that's already sleeved, or just buy a crate block that's already sleeved. So typically your builders are going to be hovering in the Gen 1, Gen 2s. Now your straight up swap dudes, they're going to be Gen 3s and Gen 4s because you get all the advantages. Again, the coating sprayed on the cylinders, the lightweight blocks, just amazing technology. So what are we looking at for cost currently? I mean, this could change any day. Right now, a Gen 1, you're going to be looking at $2,000 to $4,000. Obviously, your mileage may vary depending on where you shop from, but this is a pretty good realistic price range where you can get a junkyard pull from. Gen 2s, $3,500 to $6,000. Remember when I talked about cost savings? $11,000 is what you would save over going with an LS, just on fuel alone. So you could get, with those savings, a Gen 4 And this Gen 4 would ultimately become cheaper than any LS just because of the cost savings is $11,000. The Gen 4s are as high as $10,000. Now myself, if I'm going to be doing a poll, I'm going to be looking at a Gen 3 or newer because I want the dual fuel injection. Because now I'm going to be at high compression ratio. I'm going to get really cool fuel mileage. It's going to be amazing. All right, now we need to talk about the 5.2 liter Voodoo because this bad boy is its own animal. This is going to be coming in the Shelby GT350s. This is a 5.2 liter engine. What makes it different is the flat plane crank. This is going to get your exotic high RPMs characteristics. This is going to come with 526 horsepower, which is just crazy. And you're going to get that scream, that exotic, like, yeah! I can't make the sound out of my voice, but I'll play a little clip right here. That's the scream you're going to be looking at. And I actually just seen this video that made this great case that all these bougie cars are losing their appeal because now you're just paying for a badge. Yeah, back in the 80s, the 90s, and early 2000s, they offered you some sort of performance you couldn't get from the cheaper cars. That's gone now. Look at this Dark Horse. 526 horsepower, flat plane crankshaft, 5.2 liter engine for a tenth of the cost of one of those exotic cars. So understanding the flat plane crank, I'm going to go into a little bit of detail here, but essentially what you're looking at is your standard cross-plane cranks. This is what you're going to see in your 350s, your normal Coyotes. Every 90 degrees, there's going to be a power stroke. Your flat plane crank has 2 power strokes at 180 degrees. So when the power stroke comes, you have 2 pistons working together at the exact same time. This gives you the high revs, the sharp sound, that exotic high-pitched noise out of what you see out of Ferraris and stuff like that because they use flat plane cranks. The trade-off is it's going to have some vibration issues. You're also going to be limited to about 5.2 liters to 5.3 liters, which that's why the Voodoo is 5.2 liters. When you start going above this, the vibration gets so severe that it can literally vibrate the oil filter right off of the engine. Now there are cases where they will go over this, but that's usually a race one, but now you're going to have to go with heavy counterweights. There's a lot to it, a lot more than I can understand, but from what I read, the balancing becomes such a huge issue. It's just easier if you're going above 5.2 liters or 5.3 liters just to go with the cross-plane crank. So what are we looking at here? This is your cross-plane crank. These are where the cylinders line up. So that means there's always one cylinder on a power stroke. Just one. And then there's another cylinder, say this one right here. This would be the power stroke for 2, and this would be the intake stroke for 6. Now with a flat plane crank, you have 4 cylinders on each side. See how it goes flat across? Here's another picture right there, flat across like that. Where this one, it makes more of a plus sign. Every 90 degrees, you got an arm instead of every 180. So this, you have 4 cylinders. So 2 of these cylinders are intake stroke, and 2 of these cylinders are power stroke. Now this is a 4-cylinder, but this is the easiest way to look at it. Just remember the V8, you'd have double the cylinders. So you'd have 2 here, 2 here, 2 here, and 2 here. So this would be an intake stroke, and this would be your power stroke. If this was a V8, you'd have 2 on the power stroke and 2 on the intake stroke. So there's always 2. Every 180 degrees, 2 cylinders are touching off and going. Now you lose a little bit in the low end, but on the high end, this is going to increase your revving, and just something about how this setup really leads strong into RPMs. Here's an actual Voodoo right here, dual overhead cam. This is the 350 is going to come in, 526 horsepower. Look at that RPM range right there, though. 7,500 RPMs, almost 8,000 RPMs, which back in the day, you only seen that in NASCAR. Otherwise, everything was 5,000 RPMs. That was pretty much red line. Your torque, that kicks in at the highest at 4,750 RPMs. This is just amazing. Remember, this is where they took the horsepower at 526 RPMs, which means it could definitely go to 8,000 RPMs without a problem. So, now, what I recommend, if you don't want 500 horsepower, if you want something more, there are exotic engines. For example, you have the Roadrunner or the Boss 302. This is a high output Gen 1. So if you're building or you plan on building, this is a great option because, again, this is going to have your normal sleeves. This is buildable. Look for the Boss 302. Now, if you're looking for just high horsepower, what I recommend is the Predator. It's a supercharged 760 horsepower engine. I'd buy this out of a crate engine. Why would I buy this out of a crate engine, you may be asking? Because we're talking about like $26,000. Because Ford already, whoa, what happened to my TV? Because Ford already spent millions of dollars on R&D. They've already put these on the dynos. They've ran them right to explode. They have them on the streets. Again, you're buying millions of dollars of R&D. Yes, I could take a 5.2 liter Voodoo or a Coyote and juice it up to 760 horsepower. You know what? I'm probably going to be about $20,000 into it with the blower, the intercooler, the fuel system and everything, just getting it on the dyno. That's it, just on the dyno. Now I have to do my own R&D. Now I need to blow up my own engines. Now I need to do my own tuning. You could buy it from Ford already done with a blower already on it, already at almost 800 horsepower. This is a beast. If you like I said, I'd go this route because you're buying their R&D. You're buying a complete ecosystem. They already figured everything out. They already know everything there is to know, and it's done. You just lower it right in your vehicle. So, considerations, the best power balance. Yeah, again, if you're going to be building, I would stay probably at a Gen 2. If you're doing a swap, the sweet spot right now, because of the price, is like a Gen 2 or Gen 3. I'd lean more to the Gen 3, spend a little bit more, because then you get that dual fuel injection. Now, if you're looking for maximum savings, but you still want to go with the Coyote, the Ford F-150 pulls the best way for value, because it's just so available. Anyways, appreciate you guys watching this video. Why is this cutting off again? I wonder if my cord's going bad. Anyways, appreciate you guys watching the video. If you'd like to help support the channel, the best way to do is click on that Amazon affiliate link. Even if you don't buy what that link is for, and I'm going to have this book on there, just clicking on it and doing the Amazon shopping you were already going to do anyway, I'll kickback for it because you came there off my channel. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.